All right, Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or rather the Latvian in the room, and that is Kristaps Porzingis, who has not played since the end of April, still dealing with that calf strain. Reporting out there suggests that Porzingis will be out for at least the first two games of this series. What are you hearing right now about Porzingis? And, I mean, just how impactful is it for the Celtics not to have him for, let's just say at least the first two, maybe even longer in this series?
Yeah. So, look, there's been little encouraging glimpses, right? Probably the first weekend after it happened, he showed up and he was doing some stationary shooting. And I thought, you know how guys tend to disappear when it's a bigger deal. So I thought that was an encouraging sign. I don't think they're trying to fool anybody here. He admitted as much afterward that it's very similar to one he had on the other leg at the start of the season. It's going to take more time. I think we all circled the start of the Eastern Conference Finals as a potential date. Here's what I'll say that guys inside the Auerbach Center can't say. There's no reason to rush him, right? If you trust the talent you have on this roster, if you trust the roster you've built, then okay, navigate these first two games. Maybe then you look up, you see where he's at in his recovery. You see where the series is at. And maybe it's so selfish to say oh, maybe you have the fortune of resting him at least deeper into the series. I think you want to get him some reps before, if you are lucky enough to go on to the NBA Finals. But I do think that sort of is Indy the team that you want to throw a 7'3" dude on the court and tell him run up and down against this track meet. So I would just tread cautiously if I was them. And I think they understand, right? If they're going to achieve their ultimate goal, which is the whole conversation around here, then you probably need to just be as careful as possible and hope that soon to be 38-year-old Al Horford and whatever small ball lineups you come up with are enough to kind of hold the fort.
Yeah, if I have to hear the phrase solely a strain ever again, I didn't know what that was before these playoffs. And all of a sudden, you've got Giannis, you've got KP, you've got others dealing with calf strains. Mike Conley was dealing with one early in the conference semifinals. I mean, that is, calf strains have threatened to derail this entire postseason. And I get the desire to be cautious with Porzingis because, look, not all injuries are created equal, but, the facts are Kevin Durant had a calf strain during the NBA Finals in 2019. That led to an Achilles tear, which cost him the entire next season. So if you're the Celtics, part of you is thinking about this series. Part of you thinking hey, if Porzingis exacerbates that injury, might lose them all of next year. That's got to be in the back of their brains inside that office as well. Look, I think they can win the series without him. I mean, all the prognostications I've seen out there are 5-6 games. So, not all guesses are correct, of course, but the Celtics do have a pretty decent talent edge in this series, experience edge in this series. They don't necessarily need him. I think they will need Luke Kornet to play some meaningful minutes in this series. I mean, you said Al Horford, 38 years old, almost 38 years old, played a great series last round and, doesn't get enough credit for playing at this level at this stage of his career. But you kind of mentioned the pace of play here, and it is going to be kind of a track meet if Indiana has its way. And I think you're going to need to give some of your guys breathers at times, especially if Al's chasing around like Miles Turner or some of these other guys out there on the floor. I think you need more from Luke Kornet. And Luke Kornet, he played just 12 minutes per game in the 4 games he played against Indiana. 4 points, 3 rebounds. He's got to be a little bit better than that. Be an impact player on both ends in this series. Kornet, he was.
Can I give you the curveball? Can I give you the curveball? That's probably going to come. So, I think it's twofold. I think one, you're just going to play smaller at some point, right? That might be Tatum at the center, which they didn't play. I've actually been surprised that they haven't gone to that more without Porzingis, just to even just get a look at it, right? And maybe they just wanted to back pocket it. They know kind of how that works, and they have enough talented guards. You could go 3 guards with Peyton Pritchard, or you could go, more size and add Hauser out there. However you want to do that, you can find ways to make that work. Maybe Xavier Tillman will get a chance here, but I think the wild card is going to be O'Shea Brissett. We saw, especially I think I got to go back and watch the film. I know for sure he played a couple small ball lineups as sort of the de facto center, and he has motivation going against his former team. And he, it's just when I've been at practice the last couple of days, it's weird. I don't feel like I've seen a lot of O'Shea Brissett, and all of a sudden he's out there shooting. And so I don't know, antennas go up. I do think that they know that's a motivated player going against his former team, the same way that Aaron Nesmith is going to be hell bent in this series. And so I wonder if, whether it's O'Shea, whether it's Tillman, you're just going to see some small ball lineups. And, because you can't let Al go 38 minutes in this series, or else he's going to be gassed.
So you're calling for the O'Shea Brissett bat signal to go up in this series.
They haven't had to use it like all season, but it was like, like this is why you build rosters and you hope that there's a need. And I did not expect at any point this postseason to be like, oh shit. I actually heard someone, a couple podcasts up here were talking about it, and I was like, I don't know if that makes sense. Then like I started jogging my memory, and I was like, yeah, I guess they did go small like that. And then I'm like, oh yeah, he has been in practice a little bit more, at least visible. Maybe they will kind of throw. The only thing I would say there is he's really limited offensively, really struggles to finish around the basket. Joe typically doesn't trust players that can't keep the offense afloat. And if you're thinking you're going to have to trade baskets with this team, it might limit just how much they go to it. But I just think they got to be creative here.
So let's talk about the matchups these two teams had in the regular season. Celtics were 3-2 against Indiana during the year. I've not played them since late January, so a lot of time has passed. Only one played game against Indiana with Pascal Siakam, who's been great this postseason. He had 23 points in that matchup with the Celtics back on January 30th. Haliburton missed one of those games, so there's been a lot of moving parts since the Celtics and Pacers last played. What did you take away, though, from those matchups that maybe help you kind of foresee how this series might go?
Yeah, I guess I default to, right? They got the Pacers when Haliburton was in all the conversations about like the best players in the league and dominating, because the Pacers were really good out of the gates, right? And the whole IST thing, and we can overinflate that all we want, but he was really good at the start of the year, and then he hit the injuries, the calf or the hamstring and the ankle against the Celtics, and so like he just didn't seem to be the same player. I think we've seen in that Knicks series, he's a little closer to what the Celtics saw at the start of the year. And I think that's the Haliburton they're going to have to expect, like the guy who can all of a sudden start raining down threes and still hurt you with the pass and all that. And I still don't think he's even quite back to that level where his assist numbers were off the charts. And so, but it's undeniable. You look at their offensive rating, you look at the points they put up, they're going to want to win the shot margin. If you've spent any time in Boston, Joe Mazzulla like loses sleep if his team does not get more shots. Don't even worry about the 3-pointers. Like it's all shot margin, rebound margin, turnover margin, and the Pacers are really good at that, and they're well coached. And so I just think that to me is we talk a lot about the math game up here, and Joe Mazzulla wanting to win the math like with the 3-pointers and all that. Indiana's going to try to win the math game with pushing the pace, getting more shots, getting offensive rebounds against a smaller Celtic team, and just trying to win that battle. And the Celtics got to be ready for that. And you can tell that's like all Joe has harped on in the kind of the ramp up here. But for me, it comes down to Haliburton. Are Derek White and Drew Holiday ready for that challenge? Like, how much can you pull Jalen or Jason off of a Siakam, or however you want to play that matchup game? But like he's the one, it feels like that there's the most variance. Like if he's really good, you're probably screwed. And if he's really bad, then it feels like you can win that game.
Oh, we saw that in the Knicks series. Like when he was great, it was tough to stop the Pacers. When he was bad, the Knicks usually rolled. And look, you go back to that December game, the quarterfinals of the play-in tournament. Haliburton had 26 points. He shot like 55% from the floor, 45% from three against Boston, 10 rebounds, 13 assists, no turnovers in that game. So that was like the best version of Tyrese Haliburton. But he had, in the 3 games he played, beyond that, missed that 50-point blowout game the Celtics had. But 3 other games, 12.3 points, 35% from the floor, 23% from three, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. So the Celtics can look back on what they've done against Tyrese Haliburton and say, we've kind of got some stuff figured out here. You can throw a big body in Drew Holiday on. You can put Derek White and his defense, the even bigger body in Jaylen Brown. Like you can do a whole bunch of different things with the kind of defenders that the Celtics have, for Tyrese Haliburton. And I don't want to make it too simplistic, but it kind of is with these Pacers, right? Like if you stop Tyrese Haliburton, you beat Indiana. If you make Tyrese Haliburton inefficient, you're going to beat Indiana. Like the numbers bear that out over the course of the season. I also think the 3-point line, as it always is with Boston, but the 3-point line for both teams in this series is a key. I mean, Indiana, the 2 wins they had against the Celtics, they shot nearly 50% from 3 in those 2 games. So if you can, make them inefficient from the 3-point line and slow Tyrese Haliburton down, you're going to give yourself a chance to win this series pretty quickly.
I think one thing that I fall back on is, as impressive as that win was on Sunday, I mean, they shot 70%, and the Knicks still had it at 6. Which is ridiculous in general, but like the Knicks got it down to 6 in the third quarter. I'm like, how is this happening? Like, how do you score this? How are you this efficient and you're still like trying to have the stiff arm? Now, like, look, they never really got close after that, and I do think beyond Haliburton, like they got decent depth here. Like TJ McConnell doing what he did is absurd. I'm not lying when I say Aaron Nesmith scares the hell out of me, both because he went 8 for 8 in that game and was like phenomenal offensively, but he's like, when he was here, he was just absolute loose cannon. Like he was crashing into everything in sight. We nicknamed him Crash because of it. And I do think add in a little jolt of, hey, those guys gave up on me because they wanted what they thought was a piece in Malcolm Brogdon to get them over the hump and win that championship. He's going to be pissed. And so I wonder how that's going to play out and whether he's just going to be absolutely swarming the Jays and trying to, just the prototypical Aaron Nesmith revenge game. I think he's sort of the X factor in all this. And again, their younger guys have played well, but will they be ready for that stage? That Game 7 win told me a lot about like that, the fact that they can go into a tough environment and play well. But, I just feel like the moment keeps getting bigger and bigger, and Celtics have been there. Pacers really haven't. I'm eager to see how that sort of differentiates itself as the series goes along.
I was going to get to Nesmith, but you brought him up, so let's get to him now. What is this just a question of like opportunity meets talent? Like, I mean, he didn't have a lot of opportunities in Boston because he was behind some really good players. And look, I don't think the Celtics trusted him, in the postseason in years past. So that's why they go out and get a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, who is on paper a more trustworthy player. But I got to say, few players and how they broke out have surprised me as much as Aaron Nesmith. Like, I didn't think much of him, and I didn't see as many games there as you did, but I was there a lot, and I kind of watched him, and it's like, all right, he's a pretty good guy, decent athlete, but his 3-point numbers, I don't have them in front of me, but like, they just took off in Indiana. Like, maybe he dedicated himself more to becoming a better 3-point shooter. Maybe the freedom that Rick Carlisle gave him, maybe enabled him to become a better 3-point shooter, but this guy has become a legit starter, obviously, on a conference finals team, and I'm not exactly sure how we got here.
Yeah, I don't think anyone like if you had told me that in 2 years he's going to be the roadblock to the Celtics getting to the NBA Finals, I probably would have thought you gone crazy and like something really weird happened in the universe. But yeah, you could just tell he was, even when he got here, half the time with those kind of guys, it's like, is he making shots, right? And so whether it was Ime initially or Joe after that, if you're not making shots and you got the Jays in front of you, like you're not playing, right? Like, and there was a ton of guards, there was wing depth, like there's just not an opportunity there. Indiana was in this position where they could let him go out there and like the little puppy that doesn't know what to do with his legs, and just like eventually figured it out, and he had the room to make mistakes and use that to grow. And credit to him, because it really doesn't happen. I start thinking about guys the Celtics have brought in that lottery-ish range. Romeo Langford, like sort of same prototype, right? Like didn't shoot the ball well, but everyone said he's a defender, he'll find it, he'll figure it out. Never did. Didn't have the motor that Nesmith has. Like Nesmith had something that was clearly going to translate at the NBA level with the way he defended, and then the offense caught up to it. It's a bad comparison, but it kind of feels a little bit like Avery Bradley, where Avery comes in and doesn't make a shot for, God, felt like 6 months. They send him to Maine, they bring him back. Next thing you know, he's like kicking Ray Allen out of the starting lineup. And now, like, okay, I don't know if Aaron Nesmith was here in 2012, that would have happened, but it just goes to show that when you have opportunity, when you gain the confidence, and when like you have a coach that kind of molds you, it can translate eventually. And so credit to Nesmith, because he had to stick it out, and credit to the Pacers for developing him and finding a way, because that they didn't get a whole lot in that trade, and took on a lot of, what I would say, flotsam at the end there to make that deal and make the salaries work. But here we are. Celtics kind of had to still throw in a Rob Williams to go get Drew Holiday for Malcolm Brogdon's depleted armless body or whatever. Well, from his injury that deterred him last year. So it worked out really well for the Pacers in terms of they got a core piece that really looks inspiring moving forward.
And he is going to be if Indiana wins, I would make a guess that Nesmith's going to be a big reason why, because he's going to have to defend one of the Celtics' top perimeter players, right? Whether it's Tatum or Brown. And Tatum, I was looking up his numbers against Indiana this year, like outstanding. Like he's like almost 60% from the floor, almost 50% from three. Like he has been ridiculous. Now, Siakam is going to have an impact there, right? Like Siakam's a very good defender. Yep. You look back at his numbers in Toronto against Tatum and Brown, they're pretty good. But the question's going to be for Indiana, like who defends the other guy, right? Like, are you going to, Nesmith probably gets the first, tour of duty, but then you're talking like Obi Toppin getting a shot there. I mean, I think that's a huge problem for the Pacers going into the series.
Yeah. Like you start playing the matchup game, right? And so, okay, they'll defensively, they'll probably do what the Cavaliers did. Okay, Al Horford beat you. Like, we're going to leave you open. Show us at 37 and 11 months and 2 weeks, you can make those shots and do what you did in Game 7 or Game 5 of that series. and do it consistently. And maybe that's enough. Maybe like that gives you a couple extra bodies to throw and impede the Jays. But even when they sub, like they're smaller in terms of their guards. Like Halliburton's got size, but he's not an
they're going to hunt him. They're going to hunt
100%.
him all series
Exactly.
long.
And so, that's going to be the trouble for them is like if the Pacers want to play fast and the Celtics are going to put you in every action and try to like really wear you down. We saw this in the other series, right? They weren't afraid to go with the Mitchells of the world and back to round one. So like, I just feel like they know that there's advantageous matchups out here. Whereas I don't know if the Pacers can look across and say like, yeah, definitively we can do that. Like maybe it's okay. We're going to try to put some stress on Al Horford, especially knowing like the pace we're going to play at and the fact that they don't have bigs that you can confident. Like, I don't know if this is a Luke Cornett series. That's what, so go back to, I think you're right. I think he might get first crack and Joe wants to stay big, especially because he doesn't want to lose the rebounding. But I just wonder if that's their path. Like, right. Like shoot super high efficiency, attack whatever matchup you can on that back line, and just hope that's enough to kind of to hang around. But yeah, I just think the Celtics are, I don't know how Indiana is going to necessarily defend all of the Celtics weapons. And that's even before Porzingis gets back.
So how significant do you think these bench minutes are going to be? Because you've thrown a couple of names out there. You've thrown out O'Shea Brissett and Xavier Tillman, who have, I'm not sure Celtics fans would necessarily recognize them, like walking,
I don't know if Joe Mazzulla would notice them.
on the concourse. Like these guys have not been factors during this postseason so far. Like the Pacers, they think they have the best bench in the NBA. I think it's a little bit overhyped, but they've got guys they can trust and guys they're going to go to. TJ McConnell was a standout.
Can we just say though, like the TJ McConnell energy and the Peyton Pritchard energy, it's just gonna like meet and just gonna be explosion.
Well, who do you think? I was gonna ask you this. Like, who is the first member of the local media? And I'll include you in this.
Yeah,
that writes the Peyton Pritchard, TJ McConnell, like,
Buddy
comparison story. I'm going to go with Jay King because this feels like it's in Jay King's wheelhouse to write about these two like gritty, tough-minded guys.
Two white guys.
Two white guys. That too, yes.
This is what we do. Like both have been super impactful on their respective teams. And I actually like, watching that game, like, man, McConnell, like, and every Celtic game that he plays against them, he is a pain in the ass. Like he's just always needling them somehow. And so like, I'm ready for it. But by the flip side, like Peyton Pritchard's hit a bunch of big shots. I don't suspect it will be me to write that story. Cause again, I think their energies are going to cancel each other out. So I don't necessarily know unless they start trading games, like where McConnell wills them to a win on the road and then Peyton Pritchard goes into Indy and has a big night. Then maybe I'll get to that point, but it's definitely coming because there's only so many storylines and the Celtics are kind of like super boring. So like we got to write about something, and I can see, if nothing else, like every time Peyton Pritchard hits one shot a game in these playoffs, where you're like, man, that's kind of a ballsy shot. Like he pulled up from the logo in Cleveland, had another one when they got to like 7, which is about as close as Cleveland got that series. So it just feels like we're gonna end up talking a lot about the bench pieces and whether they hold up, but like that's a lot of pressure on Indy's sort of role players, and I would, we're throwing everyone besides Halliburton and Siakam in that mix. And
maybe it doesn't matter because the Celtics starting 5 is so good, but I do think Indy, maybe they can trust their bench more than the Celtics can. Like TJ's there, Ben Shepherd's there, Obi Toppin's there, Isaiah Jackson, he brings some energy off the bench. Again, maybe it doesn't matter, like because this could be the kind of game where like 3 of them are decided by 20 plus points. Like I don't know, but in a battle of the benches there, I think Indy's got a little bit more juice than the Celtics have. Especially without Porzingis, right? Like, because now you're down elevated, like, you're right. Like Cornette and Tillman and O'Shea, like guys that we just haven't seen a lot of. You're pushing O'Shea Brissett hard, man. You are calling your shot right now. You are calling your shot on O'Shea Brissett. I don't remember this if O'Shea Brissett is a breakout game. He might not play a single minute this series, and it wouldn't surprise me. But I just got to start because I think one of the things that you pointed out is that's valid is right. Like you got to stretch the bench a little bit more. Like you can't play a track meet series and expect without Porzingis out there that all your guys are going to hold up. Like I don't want Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown playing 43 minutes against this team and having to play a 105 possession game. So find ways to, like, this is the reason you built your depth. Like this is Brad Stevens back in Indy. Like strut what you got here in what you built. And usually it goes the other way at this time of year. But I wonder if this is a series where they at least got to experiment a little bit. And Joe Mazzulla, of course, will play the same 7 guys, and I'll look like an idiot. Yeah. All right, so I think we both like Boston to win this series, but how far do you think it goes?
It's so weird being overconfident in the Celtics. Like for
Yeah.
years and years, I've just been conditioned to think 6 and 7 games, and it's almost jarring. Like we just had, I felt like a month off, and I honestly, I was trying to think. I was like, I can't remember the last time we did this. Like even the Celtics in 2008, one of the first years I was kind of around the team. It was like
Mm-hmm.
every series was a grind. You were never waiting for the next opponent, and here we are.
Atlanta, Milwaukee, like they had
Yes.
some dogfights in that postseason.
So in one regard, I'm like, they're overdue for a series like that. And then the rational part of me looks at this and goes, I mean, like Indy's cute. And, they beat two teams that were kind of really banged up, Not that the Celtics have played particularly well this postseason or should be celebrating their 2 5-game wins, but I think if the Celtics bring that focus, if they play to their capabilities, then this should be another 5-game series. And maybe it goes 6, and maybe there's a Nesmith game. Maybe there's like a night where the Pacers shoot 70% again. And maybe I'm crazy, and maybe they're just going to keep this thing trucking, and the pace is going to be like just crazy, and the Celtics aren't going to respond well to it. But I just feel like the Celtics have more answers than the Pacers do for like how this thing should unfold. And so I guess I should go 5.
Yeah, I'm going to give Indiana one game at home because they do play pretty well at home. Halliburton usually plays a lot better at home, but I struggle finding another game to give them. Look, Indy's here and they deserve to be here, but man, they were effectively gifted, the incredible breaks in the first 2 rounds of these playoffs. Like no Giannis, barely Dame in the first round. The Knicks mash unit, OG goes out early in that series. No Mitchell Robinson. They just had so many
Brunson
guys.
breaks his hand, and like they're
Brunson
making the
breaks his
rally.
hand in Game 5. Josh Hart has an abdominal strain that limited him, or in Game 7 rather. In Josh Hart in Game 6, I just haven't been as impressed with Indiana as I would be with another conference finalist, right? Another team that got that far. So I think they win one of those home games, but I think the Celtics, I think they win in 5, man. I think they do. I hate to, I'm with you. Like the Celtics tend to let you down sometimes, and I think they're going to have one of those oddball games where they shoot like 25% from 3, and the storyline after is like, Gary Washburn attacking Joe Mazzulla for shooting too many threes and not attacking the basket more. But I think the Celtics are on a different level than Indiana right now.
Yeah, and I'm ready to lose my mind when they fumble away another game too, and I'll sit there and say like, what? And then they'll just recover on the road. Although it's like it's Indy 500 weekend, like Indy should have some energy out there. I mean,
Yeah,
that place. Remember how up they were for that IST game? Like that was off the charts energy. So I do think you're right. I think Game 3 is the one that they all of a sudden it's like and I don't know, Larry Bird's in the like. Do you think Larry Bird shows up for this thing?
No, I
Go
don't.
hide,
think,
right?
I,
Like, and not in a mean way.
I don't think
I'm just
Larry
saying
cares.
He doesn't like to be in the spotlight as it is, and then 2 of his teams sort of, and I wonder if
the potential next round with Celtics Timberwolves, the Kevin Garnett series, like he will be at every single game. I saw this thing with Paul Pierce where Paul was asking who he'd be supporting. He's like, both. Like whoever wins, I'm going to the locker room and celebrating. But let's see if they get there ultimately first. Chris Forsberg, check out his stuff over at NBC Sports Boston. Game 1 on Tuesday night in Boston. Chris, good to see you, man. Thanks for doing this.